Alright, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing okay. So this is going to be the sacrifice of Isaac. And it's going to relate to actually something that when I was reading it and preparing for this, I was like, man, this is kind of what's going on today. So at the end, I'm going to show how it all relates kind of in today, or as I go throughout the whole thing. I might do it then, I don't know. We'll just see how everything flows. Okay, so the sacrifice of Isaac. In Genesis 22, we are given a deep glimpse into a mysterious aspect of the ego-self relationship. This is a story about how God changed his mind about the sacrifice of Isaac, but why? According to legend, Satan taunted Yahweh in the same manner as Job. Abraham was confronted with the paradox of Yahweh. The first clue of the paradox of Yahweh is at the beginning. The divine name is Elohim. So, I mean, you probably wouldn't recognize this if you read the English version, but if you read the Hebrew version, it would begin with Elohim, and that is, i.e., God. At the end of the story, the name changes into Yahweh. From empirical psychology, it means that a transformation of a deity has occurred. The same thing is indicated by the fact that God has changed his mind and no longer wants Isaac to be sacrificed. And it's also a dilemma in that God knows that in the future that he's going to have to sacrifice his own son. And the same thing goes for right now, which I'm going to explain later, is that a sacrifice has to be made. So the test of Abraham was that he was caught between two different levels of divine manifestation. A primitive God, Elohim, requiring human sacrifice, and a more differentiated and merciful God, Yahweh. Now the Semitic races back in the day sacrificed their firstborn son. And the reason that they sacrificed their firstborn son was to give the first of their body for the sin of their soul. The primitive level of the deity was symbolized by a ram, which would eventually be sacrificed. The sacrifice of the ram is represented by the killing of the bad aspect of the old deity to transform the new deity, Yahweh. Psychologically, Abraham's test determined whether he was willing to risk a conscious encounter with the primitive effects in the faith that they are capable of transformation. Because he didn't refuse Yahweh his son, the covenant is ensured to happen. The transformation will take process. And as you see, that transformation, if you've read the Bible, doesn't happen all at one time. It happens in segments. So from what we learned from the previous video, and from this video that you're going to be seeing, or that you are seeing now, the equation for sacrifice becomes divided animals equals circumcision equals sacrifice of son, the three forms of sacrifice. And sacrifice is a central image in the Old Testament Yahweh worship, and the central image in Christianity as well, and it will continue to be the image going forward. The sacrifice just kind of changes. It is the self that causes me to make the sacrifice. It compels me to make. the self is the sacrifice. The relation of the ego to the self is like that of the Son to the Father. We can say that when the self calls on us to sacrifice ourselves, it is really carrying out the sacrifice, the sacrificial act on itself. We know more or less what this act means to us, but what it means to the self is not so clear, as the self can only be comprehended by us in particular acts, but remains concealed from us as a whole, because it is more comprehensive than we are. All we can do is draw conclusions from the little of the self that we can experience. We may venture to surmise that insofar as the self stands to us in the relationship of the Father to Son, that the self is in some sort feels our sacrifice as a sacrifice of itself. So what does the self gain? We see it entering into manifestation, freeing itself from unconscious projection, and as it grips us, entering into our lives, and so passing from the unconsciousness into consciousness, from potentiality into actuality, it is in the diffuse unconscious state we do not know. We only know that it becomes ourself. Hold on, let me redo that. We only know that in it becomes ourself, it has become man. The self requires the ego to carry out its actions in the world. If this is done unconsciously, it is inflation. If done consciously, it is sacrifice. When the ego accepts the assignment, it may bring relief from generalized destructive effects that manifests from the unconsciousness, or from the unconscious. This is a renewal of the covenant. So the self would be like the all, or like the God kind of like figure, and the ego is nobody really understands God, or as I prefer to say, the all. And so when the self, the all, realizes that there are certain bad things that are happening that have been obtained within everything for such a long period of time, it has to find a way to get rid of it. And you see that in the story of Noah, when a whole bunch of people die. You see it as a sacrifice of Jesus. God killed a part of himself so that you would understand the meaning of love and forgiveness, and that love and forgiveness is a better way to learn than through pain. And even today, I'd say about 85 to 90% of the lessons learned from most individuals is from pain. And it doesn't have to be that way. You know, why? Here's like a good question for everybody. Why do you make life hard? It can be simple. So how does this relate today? Well, we're going through a transformational process too. And this transformational process today involves religion. More or less, it revolves religion and science, the fish and the water bearer, the signs of Pisces and Aquarius, as we're leaving Pisces and going into the age of technology and science. But this age also is symbolized kind of by an angel, so it does also mean an awakening, but it can also bring the worst concepts in, which would be like a dark world government. So this transformational process that we're going through right now, we're in the very, very depths of it. You know, before this period, I'd say between 2000 and 2020, it was a slow kind of like a few people were awakening to it. They were catching some of the energies, and then some people took it too far this way, and some people took it too far this way, when we need to kind of like bring it back in the middle. And so what is required during these next 10 years for everything to go smoothly into the right direction is a sacrifice. Now, that can obviously happen in a variety of ways, and the choosing is up to us. This is why I tell people to think positive, because if you think negative, that's just going to bring destructive behavior, and you're going to usher in the worst for humanity. We could go through something like Noah. That ground is set. We could go through a horrible World War III. That ground is being set right now too. Or we could just kill the bad aspects in ourselves by thinking positive, meditating, doing good for others. You know, doing that little small opening the door thing. But whatever it is, something will happen, and the result of that will cause a transformation that ushers us into the age of Aquarius, and I'll pick it up a lot faster. Personally, I'm still looking at the good side of everything. I'm believing that everything's going the right way, and I believe that it will, and I'm holding steadfast to that, no matter what the prophecies I've read or some of the ones that I've even said. Most of those are just warnings. That's not necessarily saying that it's going to happen, but if we continue down a destructive path, oh yeah, we will end up destroying ourselves. And why we love destroying ourselves is a conundrum to me. I just don't understand it. So I do encourage people to think positive, and do good for other people. The world does not revolve around you, and the earth wasn't ever yours to begin with. The earth is all of ours. It's a part of us. We are it. It is us, and we are it. And we are also a part of the all. We're all connected. And that's the philosophy that I would like to see moving forward. If there's anything that we should sacrifice, it's this thought process that we need to force people to do things. We need to have control and power and money and greed. Now, those are actually the negative things. Nothing good happens in that direction. And there are better ways and better alternatives, and even things that you haven't even thought about. There are different paths to go down, and it's all up to you. It is. I can only say so much. I can only do so much. I ain't gonna control what you do. What you do is up to you. You be you, I be me, but all together we are one. And even though we are one individually, we hold different aspects in that relationship to the one that bring us all together. So, that ends Abraham. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Well, like I said, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. I'm good with talking. Then the next one I'm going to be doing the astrology of Leo, the sun sign of Leo. So I'll be spending some time with that, and once I get done with that, we're going to jump into Jacob. Alright, well, everybody have a good one. Peace out. And until next time. Ha 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 ha.